Hello again, book lovers, and finally I got round to reading some Terence McKenna, and I got The Food of the Gods, which is a kind of history of drug use, paying more attention to psychedelics, and setting forward one of Mr. McKenna's, in my opinion, wackier views about human history. I found this an easy read, to be honest, for two reasons. One, I'm very interested in the subject and have read a lot about it. Two, I'm a fan of Terence McKenna as well. But this was a bit of a drawback, really, because a lot of the stuff that was in the book I'd already heard from listening to his lectures on YouTube. And isn't it a great thing? We can keep Terence's voice alive in cyberspace. I can also listen to Eric Klein and Steven Pinker, Jonathan Haidt, all these people whose books I'm interested in reading and actually hear the voice of the person and get an idea of the personality of the person. I'm finding that some people are very good talkers but not such good writers. I'm going to include Terence in this, shockingly. Whereas others are great writers, not such good speakers. And then again, you get people like John Ronson and the Psychopath Test, which I bought on the back of having seen the introductory lecture on a TED Talk and found the book to be just as interesting, if not more so. So, yes, I think I would rather hear Terence McKenna freeform on European history, for example, than focus on the topics which are dealt with in this book. What are they? Pretty much the history of psychedelic drug use, but it's based on the idea that psychedelics were once widespread. This is the Garden of Eden idea. And there's a nice introductory passage about what a shaman actually is, what shamanism is supposed to achieve. Then we get the exposition of the story of the stoned ape, which is a much criticised theory, quite rightly, I think. As somebody who did a lot of mushrooms in the past, I'm not quite sure my experience fits in with what was supposed to be humanity's experience on discovering the psilocybin mushrooms. In Terence McKenna's theory, these are greater feelings of community. Yeah, I'll buy that one. Ego dissolution, an increase in visual acuity and heightened sexual behaviour. As for the increase in vision, well, if that's true, it would be very helpful evolutionarily. The ego dissolution, I've always been mystified by that. I mean, yes, when you have a psychedelic experience, you begin to feel that you are part of something greater, that things are flowing through you, that you are not exactly who you thought you were, but can't help noticing that this book has the author's name on the front. And I believe everybody who's ever propounded this theory would have had a name as well and would have considered themselves to be an individual. I suppose the idea here is that we had an earlier, more feminine, more communicative, more communal society. I'm not saying that's not true, but I think it's a little bit idealised in this history. That said, I did enjoy it for the insights which I hadn't got from the speeches that I've heard. Touching on the Indian Vedas, Minoan Crete, the mystery of what happened in the Eleusinian fields, something which I'm going to read a lot more about. Some rather spectacular shamanic art from Tassil in Ajer. Information about Çatalhöyük, the archaeological site which has opened quite a few doors. And having passed through part one, Paradise, where everybody was tripping and having sex, to Paradise Lost, which is where we have some kind of species memory of these psychedelic experiences. Twilight falls upon our Eden and we arrive in Hell. Hell, of course, is dedicated to an assessment of the modern drugs: sugar, coffee, tea, chocolate, tobacco, well, synthesized cocaine, television. Yes, that's included as a drug as well. And why not? And at the end, we look forward to what could be, in Terence McKenna's fantasy world, Pacific future of the human race. If only we'd all just do some psilocybin. I do have a lot of time for this. It's just a little bit fanciful, isn't it? We now realise that DMT, MDMA, psilocybin, even ketamine can be used to help treat depression and PTSD. These opinions were ridiculed maybe as little as 10 years ago, but science and evidence is showing us a way towards the correct use of psychedelics. If you haven't used psychedelics, I should say one of the common criticisms is that we don't want people to get addicted to drug X. Whatever drug X is, addictiveness is the demonic quality. I'm not sure anyone that's ever come down off an 8-hour acid trip has said, oh, I must do that again. At least not for the next 3 or 4 days. Well, there might be people. So it's a strange one, this. I agree with almost everything in it in terms of my choice of drugs, what the future might hold. I mean, a part of me hopes for some kind of swing back from this overarching statist society that we live in to something more like the 60s with its accompanying liberalism, which seems to have all disappeared now. Isn't it sad? Well, as Terence McKenna himself once memorably said, and I should say there are quite a few nice turns of phrase in the writing, the quote I'm going to hit you with is, when you preface your sentence with, as someone who has taken psychedelic drugs periodically over the last 20 years, then whatever you say after that, people aren't going to take it very seriously. But I've been to those realms, Terence. I'd like to try some DMT before I die. I'd like to think that humanity can become more pacific. I am perhaps the world's least mystical person, but I have been on these voyages, and I could see the value of a shamanic revival. It's just not going to happen though, is it?